بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله خير الأسماء. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه داء. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. أحمد الله العلي العظيم وأصلي وأسلم على رسوله النبي الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اصبروا وصابروا ورابطوا واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون. وقال الله تبارك وتعالى: فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم: واعلم أن النصر مع الصبر وأن الفرج مع الكرب وأن مع العسر يسرا، أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Greetings to all of the watchers and listeners, all my brothers and sisters who have tuned in from various parts of the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you in His protection, grant you peace, and grant you ease in all your affairs. May Allah Azza wa Jal shield you from all evil. May He shield you from all adversities and calamities. And may He grant all of us the strength and resilience to face whatever the pen of taqdeer has written for us, to face it with faith, to face it with strong conviction in the Dhat and in the Sifat of Allah. And may He enable us to spend our lives in a way that is most pleasing to Him, irrespective of what conditions may befall us. We plan and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans. We planned to attend a conference in Detroit and meet you all in person and have the pleasure and the privilege of speaking to you there. And Allah Azza wa Jal had another plan, and we are content with the plan of Allah. And the plan of Allah is always the best plan. Our brief discussion today is on the topic of resilience. Resilience is the ability of someone to not only cope with adverse conditions, but to be able to deal with them in a headstrong way, in a way that does not deter them, in a way that does not make them buckle down on their knees, in a way that keeps them moving forward. It's the ability to bounce back. It's the ability to face even the greatest of difficulties with a smile and saying to those conditions that I'm not afraid of you, I'm not scared, and you can't take me down. As long as Allah is with me, as long as I'm obedient to Him, as long as I'm doing what He expects of me, I have nothing to fear. Resilience is the ability to take on the most difficult situations with the most positive mindset. It's when the narrative inside a person's mind and in their heart, it becomes one that always works in their favor no matter what is happening around them. whether there is a lack of resources, there's a lack of opportunities, or things have been taken away from a person looks at it all and says, yes, this is what Allah has planned all along. I am going to show Allah the best of what I have. That's what resilience means to a Muslim. It's that stubbornness inside that says, I will not allow this to defeat me. I will not allow my moral, my ethic, my faith to suffer just because I may appear to be suffering outside. If we look at the stories of the Quran, I know some of those would have been brought to you in this conference. There are stories of resilience. Sometimes resilience in the face of a tyrant, or in the face of kufr and shirk, or in the face of society, in the face of difficulty, in the face of sickness and disease, in the face of abuse, in the face of rejection, in the face of emotional and physical torment. The Quran is filled with stories of resilience. The story of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a story of resilience. And to be honest, the story of Islam is a story of resilience. Islam is where it has reached today because of the resilience of its people. Islam and Muslims have this, historically, have this tenacious strength and desire that does not let them sit down. It's an ability that gives them the strength to refuse to stay on their knees, to stay on the ground, even if they've been knocked down very hard. My dear brothers and sisters, this resilience, which is a part of our Quran, it's a part of our prophetic tradition, it's a part of our Islamic tradition, needs to be revived and rekindled in our hearts, because this is the fire that will keep us alive and it will keep us thriving and prosperous, irrespective of what conditions the future may bring. The story of resilience in Islam started on the first day when the Prophet ﷺ received his message from Jibreel alayhi salam, the message of Iqra. It came with challenges. It came with questions. How? How am I supposed to do this? Who is going to help me? What will my nation do? How will they respond? And when he was told by Waraqa ibn Nawfal that you should brace yourself because you are about to lose everything, including the city that you were born and raised in. And your people are about to turn into your most severe and savage enemies. The Prophet ﷺ started this mission alone. And it was his resilience in the face of adversity, in the face of challenges, in the face of what seemed to be impossibilities. It was his strength and courage that he faced all of that with that not only kept this ship moving forward, but allowed many other people to get on board. As he was inviting people, he was hurt physically, he was hurt socially, emotionally, he was turned into a pariah. All kinds of titles were attached to his name. He was slandered as a liar. He was slandered as an insane person. He was slandered as someone who gets information from jinns. He was slandered as someone who is there to cause division. He was slandered as someone who was there to attack custom and tradition. He was hurt in all possible ways. When he was worshiping, he would be mocked. He would be abused. He would have filth thrown on his back. When he went to Taif, he was pelted with stones and hit with sticks. When he would be walking through the streets of Makkah, through the markets, inviting people towards Allah, people like Abu Lahab would be beating him with sticks, standing behind him, walking with him, and hitting him the whole way. That famous narration of Munib al-Azdi, who witnessed this before he accepted Islam. But I saw the Prophet ﷺ go out and call people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people responded in the worst of ways. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ تَفَلَ فِي وَجْهِهِ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ حَثَ عَلَيْهِ التُّرَابُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ سَبَّهُ. Some responded by swearing at him, by spitting in his face, that noble, beautiful face. Some picked up handfuls of dirt and threw it on him, حَتَّى انْتَصَفَ النَّهَارِ, until half the day passed. Then his little daughter, Zainab, came with a small bowl in her little hands. It had some water in it. He used that water to wash off the grime and the spit and the dirt that had accumulated on his face and on his hands. He washed it off and he consoled his daughter. And he said, "Ya bunayya la takhshay ala abiki ghilatan wala dhilla." Don't worry, my daughter, I will never be murdered, nor will I ever be disgraced. Imagine a person who is being attacked has that confidence that I will never be disgraced, simply because whatever he was doing it for Allah. And he knew that when something is done for Allah, it never ends in disgrace. So his companions saw him in this state. They saw his responses. They saw how he was interacting with all of these haters and with all of this abuse. It became an example for them. It became a guiding light for them. So people who accepted Islam had not only a strength of faith, but they also had the resilience that we will not back down from this, no matter what tries to bend us, no matter what forces try to make us submit and give up what we have, we will not give up. So if they had to worship in Darul Arqam, they would do that. If they had to study Quran secretly in their homes, they would do that. And even when someone like Umar ibn al-Khattab comes barging into his sister's home and sees that there is a secret private Quran class going on, and he hits his sister and makes her bleed, she stands up to him and looks him straight in the eye and says, "You can do whatever you want. We are not about to change what we are. We are not about to leave our faith." It was that resilience that touched the heart of Umar. That what is it that makes these people so strong? People would torture Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu. We've all read the stories or heard the stories, placing heavy boulders on his chest, suffocating him, cutting off his air supply as they punish him in the blistering heat, in the blistering desert. He says, "Ahad, Ahad, Ahad, Ahad. I know who I am loyal to. I know who I am doing this for, and I'm willing to die for his sake." Khabbab ibn al-Arat radiallahu anhu is dragged on hot charcoal, not just burning his back, but tearing up his back. And he continues to fight back. He uses whatever strength he has to endure this for a greater cause. If those people hadn't done that, what would we have to look up to today? Where would we be? What examples would we have? If they had backed down, if everything was a story of compromise, give up, try to make people around you happy with who you are and what you are. Don't be so stubborn in what you are doing. If they had left behind a legacy of this, then probably none of us would be Muslim today. It was their resilience in the face of toughness that enabled us to have a spark of hope when things are most dismal, when things are most miserable. So when they went out in the Battle of Badr, they weren't looking at their numbers, they were looking at their cause. And their faith, which brought the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, overwhelmed the numbers that had piled up against them. In the Battle of Uhud, they took a beating. But the moment they realized their mistake, they said, we are coming back. Yes, Abu Sufyan has regrouped his people at Hamra al-Asad. We are going to go there. We who have just been beaten and battered at the steps of Mount Uhud, we are going to go there and face them, even in this condition, with our wounds, with our battered bodies and bloody clothes. We will go. And people said, look, they are regrouping. You should be afraid. الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسِ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ. This only increased their iman. فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. We knew that this slip, this loss, was because of our own mistake. We have recovered from that mistake. We are not going to commit that mistake. Allah is on our side. He is enough for us. Our faith is in Him. Our trust is in Him. In the Battle of Ahzab, when all the people who could have grouped up against the Muslims piled together all their resources to stomp them out, إذ جاءوكم من فوقكم ومن أسفل منكم وإذ زاغت الأبصار وبلغت القلوب الحناجر وتظنون بالله الظنون هنالك ابتلي المؤمنون وزلزلوا زلزالا شديدا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about how they were shaken up to the core with fear, with hunger and cold and lack of resources. But there, it was their resilience that pulled them through. Eventually, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them victory. Now, this resilience, as I mentioned, was not just in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers. The whole story of Islam is a story of resilience. I won't go into the battles and the wars too much. Let's talk about other things in which Muslims have displayed resilience. All the people that we look up to in knowledge, for example, in the traditions of learning and teaching, they were extremely resilient people. They were resilient in their endeavors to learn and teach, and they were resilient when it was time to speak up and stand up for the truth. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah is a shining example of this. Everyone knows how he was lashed and whipped because he wouldn't back down from his stance. When they said that you must accept that the Quran is a creation of Allah, it's not an attribute of Allah, he says, no, I don't care what you do. And he, along with many scholars of that time, were persecuted. They were jailed, they were tortured, he was whipped and lashed. And it was that inner strength inside him that this is not for myself. This is not my personal stance that I'm defending. This is the deen of Allah that I'm going to defend. I don't care if the whole government is against me. I don't care if the systems around me are not in favor of what I believe in. This is the truth. I will live by it. I will die by it. And this was not the first time Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah displayed his resilience. As a student, even though he was already a great muhaddith and faqih of his time, he migrated to Yemen. He had made the intention that I will go and take a hadith from Abdul Razak al-San'ani rahimahullah. So even though he had a chance to meet him in Hajj, he had gone for Hajj, he said, but I didn't come to Hajj with the intention of meeting Abdul Razak. So I'm not going to take hadith from him here. I will go back and visit him in Sana'a. Now Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah very quickly runs out of money, he runs out of resources, and the journey ahead is long and arduous, what does he do? He could have said, well, I've run out of money. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. I'm not responsible for this. I should not overly exert myself. He said, no, I may have run out of money. I may have run out of resources for now, but this journey I have decided to undertake. Nothing is going to deter me. So he began putting himself up for hire for people who drove camels, people who dealt with camels. He said, hire me, I'll work for you. And this is how he managed to pay for himself. He worked as a laborer until he made it to Yemen. When he got to Yemen, again, he ran out of funds. So he would get food, buy bread, for example, from the bakers, and he would say, look, I'll pay you as soon as I have some money. And they said, well, you have to leave behind something as collateral. He didn't have anything. So he said, look, I've got this pair of shoes of mine. Keep this pair of shoes and I will repay you the money for this bread the moment I have money. So what does he do? He goes without shoes. He spends that time barefoot. He's going to Imam Abdul Razak, rahimahullah, every day, taking a hadith from him. Yes, I don't have shoes. It's okay. I will get through this. This is temporary. But what I've come here for is paramount. It's the most important thing to me right now. I'm not going to let these conditions stop me. As people around got to know that Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal is there, they started flocking to him to take hadith from him. Once during that time, a thief came and stole his clothes. You know, sometimes we sit and we lament over our own difficulties, our problems, our losses, and things only seem to be going from bad to worse for Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah. So now his clothes are gone. He stays inside his room. People are coming to him and he's not coming out. They said, oh Imam, won't you relate hadith to us? He said, look, I have to share this information with you. That one pair of clothes that I had to wear, it's been stolen. I don't have any clothes, so I can't come out. They brought all kinds of money to him, all kinds of wealth. He said, I don't want it. Then he said, if you want to take hadith from me, I can do it. What you can do is, you take all your money back, and I will take money from you for the writing down of hadith, because that is something that I can take money for. So he took 1 dinar, and in exchange for 1 dinar, he wrote a hadith down, and that's how he was able to get a pair of clothes and survive that day. You've possibly heard of Al-Hasan ibn Sufyan, great muhaddith and faqih of his time. Once a group of students came, they had traveled from far, and they were eager to take hadith from him. He said, I know you've all grown up in very wealthy households, and you've always been looked after by your families, and I know you've made a long journey. So you're probably thinking that you've made the greatest sacrifice that anyone could for knowledge. But I want to share something with you about my own life. And then he told them a story where he, along with 9 of his companions, were out traveling. They went to Egypt to take hadith from a sheikh who had a very high sanad. The sheikh would come to a masjid and narrate a few hadith a day, and they had to make arrangements for themselves. They had to get by using their own means. It was only a matter of time before they ran out of whatever money they had. They started selling some of their belongings, started pawning so that they could get some money for food. Eventually, all of that ran out and they were left with nothing. 3 days passed in a state that none of them could eat. They were extremely hungry and starving. They said, look, now it's halal for us to ask. if we were to spread our hands in front of someone, we would not be sinful. But none of them wanted to ask. They all wanted to preserve their dignity. Said, well, someone has to do this. So let's draw lots. So they drew a little lottery, and Hassan ibn Sufyan's name came out. They said, well, you've been appointed, you have to go and somehow ask someone, make some arrangements for us so that we can eat. He said, okay, let me go ask Allah first. So he stood up and started praying salat. And he prayed and he prayed and he prayed. After some time, someone came and knocked on the door of the masjid and said, who is Hassan ibn Sufyan? So he presented himself. He said, it's me. He said, I've come from Amir Tulun, the prince. Tulun himself, he has sent me to you, and he had all of this money. And he said, he's asked me to give this to you. He said, what brings you here? What made you think that we were here? And what's the story? He said, well, Amir Tulun was resting, and he asked to be alone. And after he rested for a little while, he summoned me urgently. And he was holding his hip. He was in a lot of pain. I said, what happened? He said, I went to sleep and I saw in my dream that someone has come with a spear, and they put the butt of the spear, the bottom part of the spear, they shoved it into my hip. And he said, go to Hassan ibn Sufyan. He is in such and such masjid. Go and help him. He and his companions have been starving for 3 days. Go and help them. Look after them before they die. So he said, I don't know who Hassan ibn Sufyan is, and who are you? So the man in the dream said, I'm Ridwan, the angel who looks after Jannah. And Hassan ibn Sufyan is in such and such masjid. Go and look after him. Khair, he sent his servant, his man. He said, here's all this money. Please use this. And Amir Tulun is coming himself in the morning to look after you. So they took this money and they bought whatever they could at the time, and they said, let's get out of here. Because the moment the prince arrives, we're going to be famous. We're going to have people following us around. They're going to say, oh, there's that group of awliya Allah who brought the help of Allah with their du'as. There are those noble people. We don't want any of that. So they got out of there. In the morning, Amir Tulun showed up, and he said, where did they go? He understood that these were a group of mukhlis, sincere people. So he had brought a lot of money. So with that money, he purchased that entire area, that entire lot, and he made it waqf for a masjid and made it waqf for an institute of learning. There are many stories like this. We can go on. For me, it's all day. For you, it will be all night. There were 4 Muhammads. Another story comes to mind. The story of the 4 Muhammads. This also happened in Egypt under the rule of Ahmad ibn Tulun. Muhammad ibn Jarir al-Tabari, Muhammad ibn Khuzaymah, the famous muhaddith, Muhammad ibn Nasr al-Marwazi, Muhammad ibn Harun al-Ruyani. These all 4 were under similar circumstances. And the governor of that time, he saw in his dream, some narrations mention that he saw the Prophet ﷺ saying that the 4 Muhammads are starving, go and help them. This was their resilience. It's easy to back down. Backing down, taking the easy way out, giving up. This is the easiest thing, but this is also the most destructive thing. Our Salaf Salihin showed us that no matter how difficult things are, they will always fight back. They will always stand up. They will not be allowed to be knocked down, no matter how difficult the circumstances are. I remember another story. Famous Imam of Nahw and Lugha, famous literarian, Abu Ali al-Qali. He was originally from Baghdad. He was visiting Spain at that time, Al-Andalus. And one of his students came to see him. It was springtime. Abu Ali al-Qali was at Qurtuba. There's a little city, or it used to be a very beautiful place, Al-Zahra, Madinat al-Zahra. So there was a jami' there was a masjid there. Abu Ali al-Qali was there. He was narrating some of his literary narrations, and the prominent people of Qurtuba were all there. So this student comes rushing to see him. It rained along the way, his clothes got all wet. When Abu Ali al-Qali saw his student, he called him forward, he said, come. So he was hesitating, he was embarrassed, my clothes are all wet, how am I supposed to go in front of my teacher with all my wet clothes and so on and so forth? He said, don't worry, let me tell you a story. I've had to go to my teachers in much worse circumstances than what you're in. You're just wet. All you have to do is stand outside for a little while, the sun will dry you off, or just change your clothes. He says, when I was in Baghdad, I used to go to Ibn Mujahid rahimahullah, and it was always my desire to be the first one in class, but people would always beat me. He says, one day I decided I'm going to go super early in the morning while it's still dark. So he says, I ran out of my house, and the path that I would normally take, the shortcut that I was going to take, it was blocked. So there was some kind of a gate that was blocking that alley that would have taken me there. And he said, what do I do? I'm going to get late. I've made all this effort. So he saw a little trench, like they dig for the sake of sewers. So there was this trench that had been dug for a sewer. It was going under the ground. It would have taken him underneath the gate into that alley. So he said, I jumped into that little trench and I started crawling forward. And as soon as I got just a little bit ahead, that trench narrowed and it trapped me. And I got stuck so badly, I couldn't get up, I couldn't go down, and I found myself trapped in this trench. So he said, I had to get out of there. I started getting more and more desperate because the time was passing and I needed to be there before everyone else. So he said, I started pulling myself. And as I pulled myself, my clothes began to rip. And they ripped the edges of that trench. They tore away my clothes. And I still wasn't able to get out. So I forced myself even harder. And my skin and then my flesh started ripping. And I kept on pushing and pushing and pushing until in some places the meat got stripped right down to the bone. But I didn't stop. I kept pushing until I got myself out of that little ditch, and I ran and I made it to the teacher and I presented myself. My clothes were ripped. I was all cut and bleeding, but I had fulfilled what I wanted to do. Now this might sound a little extreme, but he was saying this to his student that, look, you might have gone through some difficulty to come here, but we've gone through much worse. And this was to console his student so that they don't give up hope. There, we could go, like I said, we can go on and on and on with the stories. But resilience needs to be exercised in every area of life. Whether we're seeking knowledge, whether we're teaching knowledge, subhanAllah. Imam Sarakhsi rahimahullah, the great Hanafi faqih, he was jailed because he didn't agree with some of the actions of the governor of that time. He was jailed for some 15 years. And that jail wasn't like in the jail that we would imagine. He was put in solitary confinement at the bottom of a well. And he had to spend that sentence there. So there he is, trapped for years. His students would come and visit him. And he thought that, well, I'm here and these students are also here. Let's not waste this time. He could have succumbed to misery, depression, worry, fear. All kinds of elements could have been just tearing away at him at that time. But instead he started teaching. And from the bottom of that well, he started doing sharh of Al-Kafi, which was a famous matan, a fiqh. And over a period of 9 years, from his memory, from the bottom of that well, he did imla, he dictated what became one of the largest, most voluminous compilations in Hanafi fiqh, the Al-Mabsut of Sarakhsi. He did it from the bottom of a well. So knowledge and deen, it's not about resources. It's about what we make of the condition that we are under, what we make of the circumstances. It's not about the circumstances themselves. Life is not always going to be the way we want it to be. Now, one of the things that happens with us is we are constantly looking for some sort of something to stimulate us, something to keep our attention. And of course, with the time that we spend in front of the screen, it does this to us, where we are constantly in need of some kind of stimulus. And it creates this kind of attention deficit disorder inside us, which makes us very nervous, makes us very restless. We constantly need some sort of stimulus. We need a device in our hands or in front of us. So what happens? We get bored. Boredom is one of the first signs of lack of resilience. We don't have the resilience to endure. Forget about discomfort. There's no discomfort there. It's just the lack of stimulus. We are unable to endure the lack of stimulus. We get bored. We start walking around. We start getting restless. We start panicking. We need to build resilience. Resilience in ibadah, when it's convenient, when it's inconvenient. Making wudu when it's inconvenient is one of the most rewarding things. Praying when it's inconvenient. Walking to the masjid in the darkness results in light on the day of judgment. We can't walk to the masjid today because of these circumstances. But what is stopping us from standing up and praying in front of Allah? Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah had an average quota of 300 raka'at of nafil salat. 300 raka'ats. Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah, the great faqih, great jurist, Qadi al-Qudat, the Supreme Court judge, you can say, of his time, average of 100 raka'at. Imam Bukhari rahimahullah had his own share of nafil raka'at and Quran that he would recite. He was so persistent in this and so devoted in this. Once a wasp came and attacked him while he was praying. It stung him some 17 times in his salat. He didn't leave his salat. This is resilience in ibadah. Resilience is required in every aspect of our lives. The moment we lack resilience is when we give up. We start feeling sorry for ourselves. We start complaining. We start blaming everything in our lives or the condition that happens to be affecting us. We start blaming people for our problems. All kinds of things go wrong. So where does resilience start? For a Muslim, resilience starts with La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. It starts with Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. That no matter what happens, I stay loyal to Allah. No matter what happens, I turn to Allah for my needs, irrespective of what's happening in my life. It starts with having the best of narratives in my mind. That self-talk, that thought that tells me all is going to fail, everything is doomed, everything is lost. To switch that narrative off and to start connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those moments. Kullu min indi rabbina. This is all coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When commandments come, kullu min indi rabbina. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not going to sit around looking for excuses to leave out that commandment. When conditions come, this is from Allah. I am going to tackle this condition, this situation, in the best way that I can. Sometimes there will be losses. The Prophet ﷺ suffered losses. He lost some of his closest people. He didn't give up. And to make matters worse, people mocked him when he lost. When he lost his male offspring, people made fun of him. They said, he is going to end now. No one is going to talk about him. His lineage is cut off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, Inna a'tinaka al-kawthar, fasalli li rabbika wanhar, inna shani'aka huwa al-abtar. You will see, O Prophet of mine, the one who insults you and has enmity against you, he is the one whose mention will be cut off from the world. No one will speak about them. So whether we're going through a situation of a loss, whether we're going through some stress, This is a time when many people are struggling with their finances. They're struggling with their jobs, keeping their jobs, having a job, having some sort of income. What will happen after we come out of this? Where will we be? How will we pay our bills? How will we look after our families? There are many things going on in the minds of people right now. We need to bounce back from this and face it with resilience, that no matter what happens, I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to give up. Spending time alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking to Allah and telling Allah our problems. Oh Allah, I am weak. I am feeble. My iman is limited. My resources are limited. Rabbi anni massani ad-durru wa anta arhamur rahimin. Oh Allah, I have been inflicted. I am in pain. You are the most merciful. Only Allah can remove that affliction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't bring that affliction upon us to destroy us. He brought it to test us. And my dear brothers and sisters, this is a time to turn towards Allah in tawbah and istighfar. This is a time to get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on our side. This is a time to rid the world and cleanse our world of sins, disobedience, ghafla, negligence. It is a time to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our loyalty. And subhanallah, some people are looking at this opportunity that we're stuck at home and they're using it. And others are whining, complaining, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, I'm going to go crazy here. No. فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ فَانْصَبْ وَإِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَارْغَبْ. Allah has given you that time. Spend that time with Allah. Tire yourself, exhaust yourself. What a beautiful time to increase your tilawat of Quran. What a beautiful time to learn what you haven't been able to learn. What a beautiful time, instead of spending time just in front of the screen, watching idle things, watching lame things, watching non-beneficial things. What a beautiful time to invest in ourselves. Who knows who will come out of this and who doesn't? To be perfectly honest, only Allah knows. When the Prophet ﷺ told us about the plague, he made it very clear that it will be a punishment for the disbelievers, but it will be a mercy for the believers. Isn't it time for us to bring the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon ourselves, upon our families? So keep yourself with people, attach yourself with people who have a positive mindset. Try to change the narrative in your own mind to a positive narrative. Never blame Allah for difficulties and problems. In fact, we say, oh Allah, what you have decreed is going to happen. No one can change that. Oh Allah, make me content with your decree. And allow me to live in this world and leave this world in a state that you are pleased with me. That's the only thing that matters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen our hearts, make our feet firm, make our minds strong. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the strength and courage to keep rising and getting closer and closer to Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never extinguish the flame of desire to achieve in this world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to live our lives in such a way that we become that beautiful story that the people after us will read. We become the story of resilience. When people in the next generation or in the next century read about us, they should read about that resilient ummah, that strong ummah, that faithful ummah, that loyal ummah that never backed down. This is not a time for us to become reclusive and for us to give up and for us to become complacent. This is our time to rush towards Allah. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. There is no better time than this. We need to do it as individuals, as families, and as a whole ummah. So all of us that are participating in these sessions, we need to make some very quick and firm decisions for ourselves. These decisions will impact the outcome. And these decisions are going to decide how we leave this world and how we are remembered after we leave this world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you all in His protection. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you all safety and security. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you and your families health and prosperity. And may Allah azza wa jal enable us to come out of this difficult circumstance in a way that He is pleased with us. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا And alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.